welcome you to this press briefing. And we want to thank you so much for honoring our invitation in spite of the short notice. You will recall that the invitation by the leadership of the International Press Institute and the Nigerian Guild of Editors and the Nigerian Union of Journalists was sent out late last night. And in spite of the short notice, we are encouraged by your turnout and solidarity. Thank you so much. The IPI, the NGE, and the NUJ called this press conference this morning to update members of the public on the ordeal of our colleagues, the editor of First News, Mr. Segun Olatunji, who and people we earlier thought were not state actors, abducted from his home in Lagos on March 15. In a statement by the management of First News, Mr. Olatunji's abduction was linked to a recent story published by the media organization titled Revealed, Defense Chief Running Office like family business, public interest lawyers. Narrating the ugly incident, Mr. Olatunji's wife, who witnessed the adoption of her husband, said the armed men stormed their residence a few minutes past 6 p.m. that day. She said on their arrival, the abductors immediately confiscated her husband's phone before hovering him into a van. She said she asked the abductor what her husband's offense was and where they were taking him. The stem-looking men rebuffed her inquiries. For days, the publishers of First News, Mr. Daniel Iworiso Maxine, as well as Mr. Tunji's colleagues and family members, tried in vain to locate him. But those who adopted him ensured he was incommunicado. They also ensured that no one knew his whereabouts, a development that further traumatized his family, employers, and colleagues. For this, the leadership of the IPI, the NGE, the NUJ, frantically searched for Mr. Olatunji. We interacted with the presidency, the Nigerian police force, both Lagos and Abuja, the Nigerian Army, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Ministry of Interior, the Defense Headquarters, the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, the State Security Services, and State Security Services. Other security agencies were also contacted, but all the efforts failed until last night. The military claimed the journalist was not in their custody. They lied to us and top government officials whose intervention we sought. However, on Monday, IPI Nigeria was able to determine without doubt that the journalist was being detained and tortured by the Defense Intelligence Agencies in Abuja. The IPI then informed the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, and the Chief of Defense Intelligence, Major General Emmanuel Ndiadeye, of his finding and asked him to release our colleagues immediately. We also provided the information to top government officials who also reached out to General Musa and Ndiadeye. Again, they lied that the journalist was not in their custody. Yet, our sources were telling us we needed to act fast to save our colleagues from being killed. That was what culminated in the IPI Nigerian press statement on Wednesday, which clearly accused the DIA of adopting and detaining Mr. Olatunji. Once that statement circulated in the media, the anti-democratic officers became jittery. They became even more confused after they became aware that the NGE, NUJ, and IPI has scheduled a follow-up press conference for this morning. Knowing the game was up, they admitted their crime last night. They confessed to the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Mohammed Idris, that our colleague was in their custody and that they will release him immediately. Now, let me say that this morning, at about 7 o'clock, they called one of our colleagues, Mr. Yomi Odunuga, to come to their facilities to sign a bail paper for the release of Olatunji. So at about 7:30, Segun, Yomi Odunuga called me and said I needed to accompany him to the facilities. As we were going, they called Yomi and asked us to wait for them at the front of Catholic Church in Asokoro. So we were there. Now, after some time, they called again and said that we should move towards the DSS staff quarter. We were on our way going, and they asked which car we were using, and we told them we were using Prado Black Jeep. And after some minutes, they asked us to stop. We stopped. And suddenly we saw their car. About 4 of them, and Segun was inside that car. Then after some time, they said we should come and see Segun. We went there, we saw Segun, and brought us 2 papers and said Yomi Odunuga should sign. We signed, and later they released Segun to us. In other words, they behaved like kidnappers. The way and manner Segun was released to us. Not even in their office, along the road, along Asokoro Express Road, under the bridge. For us, that is uncivilized way of doing things. And they were hooded, especially under democracy. And, and all along, where Segun was being interrogated, he was blindfolded and detained in the DI facilities underground cell. He spent good 11 days. At this point, we want to put on record the important role played by the Minister of Information and other top officials of government towards the resolutions of this matter. These reckless and anti-media officers, who apparently have no respect for civilian authority, like to and disobey officials of the federal government who intervene. We are sure that many right-thinking members of the society, including the international community, are both amazed and shocked by the lawlessness and fear-provoking action of the DIA and agencies under the command of Major General Ndiadi, who reports directly to the Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa. The DIA's action makes us wonder about its real intention. Our suspicion is that they plan to secretly eliminate Mr. Olatunji so that members of the public will attribute his disappearance to unknown gunmen. But we are glad to report this morning that they failed woefully. For us, this vicious, uncivilized, unlawful, and criminal actions of the DIA is unacceptable. The action is alien to Nigerian democratic space. It is now clear that there are some officers in our military who are still finding it difficult to subject themselves to civil authority 24 years after our country returned to representative governance. We do not think this kind of attitude should be condoned by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, particularly, and Nigerians in general. If officers in a military institution like DIA could hack a journalist's telephone, mishandle his wife, abduct him, detain him secretly for 14 days, and disobey senior officials of the federal government, then our democracy cannot be said to be safe. Although our colleague has been released, we are calling on President Tinubu to ensure that these officers are punished for their bad behavior. By our standard, the action of the DIA, General Musa, and General Ndiadi are against the provisions of the Nigerian 1999 Constitution and other international instruments to which Nigeria is a signatory, which forbid the detention of any citizen or resident beyond 48 hours except with a valid court order. More so, the DI action is a direct attack on press freedom. One of the core missions of the press freedom is to serve as a watchdog on power. The press, we all know, is the connection between the people and the government. If the press is not allowed to carry out its social and constitutional responsibility, but instead obligated to power, it simply serves as an extension of power. Without freedom of the press, our democracy is endangered. In the case of corruption, a free press is critical to exposing abuses of power. For us, the media is not above the law. But in a democracy, the only way to determine wrong or right is through legal process. Gentlemen and ladies, this is not the end of the matter. The Nigerian media community shall consult further in the next few days on the action to take against CDS, the CDI, and the military regarding this matter. We thank you all for coming. Those who signed these statements are Ms. Kliu Moji, President, International Press Institute, Chris Iziguzo, President, Nigeria Union of Journalists, and Dr. Yobo Sawugiara, General Secretary, Nigeria
of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Idris Malagi, and of course, the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. For days, all of us have been working together to really identify the whereabouts of our colleague. And these two high-ranking government officials tried their best. But like you heard in our statements, it is so concerning that in spite of efforts by these high-ranking government officials, those who are abducted, detained in an underground cell, refused to budge. They could not even, open up to those in government with them. Then you can imagine if we had not put pressure, at least that of last night, when we released a statement announcing this press conference today. I must tell us that it's because of this press conference that is taking place now that really forced the hands of those that held Olatunji to release him. One thing we must understand is the life wire of any democracy is the media. The media remains the oxygen of a working democracy. And if the Constitution in Section 22 has reposed that responsibility of holding those in government to account in the media, I wonder why people are so scared to freely relate with the same media. The media, we don't bear arms. What we are here to do is to ensure that we have a saner climate that will work for everybody, including the military, including those in government, and every Nigerian. A situation where a journalist is abducted and nobody could really ascertain where he was kept for 14 days. It speaks volumes. And like I said earlier on, it's so concerning, And it is therefore very, very important that Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu must call these officials to order so that they don't undermine democratic governance. All of us are working together. We are not undermining anybody. We have not attacked the government, but we are concerned that this kind of thing will happen and not a single statement came out from government, not a statement came out from the military. You are not able to tell anybody where the journalist was kept. It's not a good one, at all, at all. And we in the media community, like we said in our statement, we are making a passionate appeal to those in government. We are not in any form of competition with them. It's not a question of we versus them. We are all together in Project Nigeria. So nobody should try to be an overlord. We are all working together to build a nation that works for us. So without much ado, I want to join our spokesperson to thank all of you for coming to this press conference this morning. Thank you very much.
On the high table. Good afternoon, my colleagues. Firstly, I would like to thank everybody, because it was due to your efforts that these people were moved. If not, I was kept incommunicado. Nobody knew where I was until even this morning when I was asked to call somebody, and I called Yomi. Well, let me tell you the genesis of this matter. On Friday, March 18th, I was in my house in Lagos. I was watching Journalist Hangout with my 7-year-old son. Then suddenly, I saw soldiers burst into the sitting room. I said, what? I stood up. Then I looked beyond them and I saw my wife and my 1-year-old boy crying in their middle behind them. And I said, what happened? She was not telling me that they came to her shop and arrested her and asked her to take them to where I was. So I said, okay. I said, that's fine. And I asked the officer who led them, who are later identified as Colonel Lawa, if I could know his identity and what they were looking for me for. He said, no, that we are from the military and we are here to arrest you. Immediately he seized my phones. He had earlier seized my wife's phones. Immediately he seized my phones. Then I said, okay, since I was just wearing boxer shorts, I said, let me get inside the room and put on something. Then some of them also followed me into the room. Then I took this shirt and the trousers. And then they took me. By the time I got downstairs, I saw soldiers everywhere inside the compound. They were everywhere. They are taking position. When we got outside the gate, I saw about 3 vehicles. They came in about 3 vehicles. You know, all kinds of people were there. Army personnel, Air Force personnel, DIA, and then some others, all fully armed. Then they bundled me into the vehicle. And then we started going. At first, I thought they were taking me to DMI in Apapa. I was wondering whether that place was still in existence. But when we got to the Air Force base, they made a detour and entered the base. And then they took me straight to in front of the office of the National Air Defense Force, Corps, where, you know, we now waited. We waited for about 3 hours. I didn't know they were waiting for a military aircraft to come from Abuja to pick me. We were there. After a while, when the aircraft came, then somebody came to me and said, give me your glasses. Before then, they had already handcuffed me. Then somebody came and said, give me your glasses. I gave him the glasses, and then they put a blindfold on me. And then they moved me into the aircraft. And then we took off. And we landed in Abuja. I didn't know it was in Abuja. I didn't know we were in Abuja. I didn't know where we were. We landed. When we landed, they took me straight, still blindfolded. Took me straight. And they took me to their office. Immediately we got there, they put leg cuffs. In addition to the handcuffs, they put leg cuffs. I was wondering whether I'd been named as a coupist. I don't know. Then they took me in. They took all my clothes, removed my trousers. I was left with my boxer shorts. They took everything. Still blindfolded, they took me in and took me into a cell. At first, they put me in a cell, cell 9. There, I was left with the leg and the hand cuffs. And even at the point, one of the officers came and tightened the right leg and the right hand. Tightened it. Then I was there, groaning in pains. And they didn't loosen that until about 2 or 3 days after. That was when they loosened that. But by the time they did that, the right part of my body was getting numb. In fact, up to this moment that I'm talking to you, I can still feel the numbness here, the back of my hand and my right leg, and even my left hand. I can still feel the numbness from the, effect of the handcuffs and the leg cuffs. So they took me in. That was on Friday night, and they left me there. Then on Monday, they changed the cell to what they consider to be a better cell, cell 6, which was, of course, a better cell. And later, they took me to see the doctor. They took my blood samples, they took my urine, and they asked me, questions about my health and all that. And then they later provided me some medications. And then that same Monday, I was called for questioning. And they were asking me about certain stories that First News had carried. They first asked me, one of them first told me that I was one of those abusing the Chief of Defense Intelligence. I said, how? They said, we did a story. I said, it was a general story. Well, they didn't say much on that anyway. Then they also asked me about a story we carried about the chief of staff to the president. I think that was a major thing. That's why I told some people earlier that those behind my arrest are people in the corridors of power who are not happy with what First News is doing, and they are bent on taking their own pound of flesh. And that was how, we started. And on Tuesday, they called me again. They asked me to write a statement. I wrote the statement. They had gone through my phone. They had seen, my source and all that. So I wrote the statement. Then they asked me to go. On Tuesday, they called me. I told them I still stood by my statement. They asked me to go, and then they left me. They left me in the cell since then. I was left in the cell until this morning. No, until last night, when they called me and said I should call somebody in Abuja that will come and guarantee my release. And then I gave them the number of Mr. Yomi Odunuga. He's my brother, he's my elder brother, and he's a very good, caring friend. In fact, he brought me into journalism some 27 years ago when I joined Punch. And he has always been there for me. So they called him, and this morning, they called him again. They called him, I think that should be about before 6 a.m., right? They called him. And, they were even, you can imagine that inconvenience, and they told him, you will have to come to somewhere around the ECOWAS secretariat to pick me up. I was wondering, in fact, I thought they would ask him to come to their office. They didn't do that. They asked him to come to somewhere around the ECOWAS secretariat to pick me up, as if I was some item. You can imagine. So, so they dragged that, then eventually, he came, They took me somewhere under the bridge in Abuja here, where they also asked him to come. And when he came, I was happy. He also came with the doctor, you know, and they asked him to sign some papers. He did sign the papers, and they released me to them. I would like to say this. Given the events, the series of events, I want to say that my life is not safe, because they have everything about me. They know my house. They will have arrested me. That's what I was made to understand. They will have arrested me in my hometown on March 8th. I was there. I went for an ICT program by Senator Yayi. That's my senator. And, you know, they will have arrested me there because one of them told me. They told me how they had been trailing me. You know, they told me how I entered the NUJ bus from my hometown and how I alighted at Olomore in Abeokuta, and the particular time I alighted, they told me and said they were watching me. Actually, what I later learned was that they had been trailing me truly, maybe for about 2-3 weeks, because when they arrested me and they were taking me away, I saw that they had lodged in a hotel close to my wife's shop where they had been monitoring. And it was from there that they located our shop, and then they arrested her and my 1-year-old baby, and, you know, forced them to, you know, bring them to where I was. That's the house. So I want to thank everybody once again. I'm very grateful for your support, for everything, for being steadfast in asking for my release. God will bless you all.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.